So folks, we're just hearing some casual banter between this amazing panel here until we get started. We will get started kind of right on time. We do have a packed agenda. So I'll start with some quick intros. I'll talk a little bit about what Letter is and why we're so interested in this topic in particular. And then the bulk of the time will be these amazing folks on the panel sharing their perspective on how AI is transforming the revenue enablement world. So give another maybe minute before we get going.
Hey, well, I saw that you actually asked a question that was directed to me in the chat, so happy to quickly chime in here before we get started. But one of the biggest suggestions that I would have is if you have access to Sales Navigator, making sure that your organization, if possible, can use CRM Sync so that you can generate system-generated lead lists, and that will provide some great opportunities to identify different leads, such as past customers at new companies, and things like that. So happy to chat offline, since I know you and I have connected a few times previously, and I do owe you a call the next few weeks. So we'll make sure that I touch base with you after our session today.
Wow, Regina, such an overachiever, already getting into it before we've even officially started.
You know, I like to talk a lot, Ali. You saw me, my extroverted self the other week.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I think we're starting to have folks kind of trickling in greater and greater numbers. And I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A in the chat as well and make sure those questions make their way to the panel. So I think now is a good time for us to just go ahead and kick things off. So in terms of the agenda for today, got a lot of things ahead of us in the next hour. Start off with some quick introductions to the folks on the panel today. I'll talk a little bit about what Letter AI is and why we're so interested in this topic. Just about 5 minutes on that. Then we're going to dive into the moderated Q&A, which is going to involve a couple of questions that we'd prepared, but also a number of fantastic questions that we got from folks on the invite on the Eventbrite registration. So we'll make sure we cover those. And then the Zoom chat Q&A is open. So please drop in questions in real time as you're hearing us speak, whatever comes top of mind for you. I'll be keeping an eye on that and making sure those questions make their way to our amazing panelists today. So that's a quick overview of the agenda. I'd love to start with some quick introductions. I think a lot of the folks on this panel don't need any introductions. I mean, these are folks who are sort of seriously, kind of well-known figures in the enablement community. And I really am grateful for you joining us today. But I thought maybe spend just about 30 seconds each doing a quick intro. I'm just going to look at my order here on the Zoom webcam. And Jeff, you're lucky number one. And so if you could start with a quick intro.
That is the exact same thing I do when I do sales coaching group sessions. I say, I'm not going to do volunteers. Whoever's at the top, you're going. So great to meet everyone on the webinar call today. My name is Jeff Jaworski. In its simplest form, over the past 20 years, I've sat at every side of the table. So enablement is very near and dear to me as a former customer who sat through a lot of sales pitches. Some you could tell were enabled, some not. And then, spent 13 years at Google, 5 of which in the enablement space. And now recently moved to Cover Genius to run their sales organization. So great to be here today.
Awesome. Phil, if you wouldn't mind going next.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Phil Putnam. I'm really your weird hybrid of a revenue enablement professional and an AI obsessive and a career coach and a life coach. So I sort of sit at that nexus of how do we navigate through this current water where the beauty and the wonder of AI is also changing the way in which our functional value props in our jobs are taking place. So that's really the perspective that I'm coming from.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. Regina, you are up.
Awesome. Hi, everyone, and also happy Valentine's Day. I keep forgetting that it is Valentine's Day, so I hope everyone is able to spend some time with their loved ones today. My name is Regina Arellano, and I've spent the majority of my career in sales, historically at Gartner for quite some time, for over 8 years, both in sales management roles as well as an account executive supporting C-level executives within the audit and risk functions, HR and finance as well. But currently I'm sitting in a GTM enablement and productivity role at Braze. And where I actually am coming up with some of my insight and expertise is because I manage our sales tech enablement strategy and how we can drive productivity within our sales org using and leveraging our tooling to support the business.
Awesome. Thank you, Regina. Excited to have you all here. Just a quick intro on me. I'm Ali. I'm founder and CEO of Letter AI, and I'll go into what Letter AI does in just a second. I'm also joined here by my co-founder and CTO, Armin, who is backup in case my internet dies and I stop becoming host. So anyway, with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So incredibly excited today. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about Letter AI, and then we're going to dive into some of the questions for the panelists today. So a lot of you might be wondering, what is Letter AI? I'd never heard of this company before up until I saw this webinar invite go out. Letter AI is a unified revenue enablement platform, and we're powered natively by generative AI. So what does that mean exactly? Essentially, what we did was we realized this amazing foundational paradigm shifting technology that is generative AI that's changing the way people work, that's changing the way in which we build software. And we applied it to this space that we really know and love and care about of revenue enablement. And we essentially reimagined everything that revenue enablement teams do with AI at the core of it, right? So what that kind of boils down to in terms of capabilities of Letter AI is, one, content management. So the ability to upload your sales collateral, assets, whatever else you have available to empower and enable your teams, being able to automatically ascribe metadata to it using AI, personalize it instantly using AI, deliver it to your end customers, leveraging AI-powered workflows. Training and onboarding. The idea here is leveraging the knowledge base you already have, combining it with vetted public data to build, and I'm not joking here, literally within minutes, rich, multimodal, interactive trainings in AI that are at a level of quality that our customers feel ready to ship 95% of the time. So high quality AI powered training, AI coaching, where you can practice and get personalized feedback with mock AI customers. And then of course, kind of cutting across all of it is just-in-time help with the Letter AI Copilot. So being able to ask any questions that you have and getting responses back, both in the Letter AI platform, as well as where your teams do work, whether that's in Slack or Teams. So that's a little bit of the overall set of capabilities and vision for Letter. One thing I want to call out is, a little bit of a deep dive on our approach. We have some Letter AI customers on the call, and if you talk to our customers, one thing they'll tell you is we are constantly shipping and we are obsessed with customer feedback. Like seriously, every time a customer tells us, hey, wouldn't it be great the app did XYZ? Like it'll be shipped sometimes within a couple of days, most of the time within a matter of a week or two versus having to wait quarters or months, right? And so I just wanted to call out a couple of things that we shipped recently or that we will be shipping very soon as a direct result of customer feedback. So very recently we went live with automated metadata generation and tag assignment for content you upload. So we heard from customers that, historically it's been painful to upload content and then have to ascribe all their tags to it, generate summaries, topics, etc. Our AI now automatically does that for you in seconds. On the training and onboarding side, and this feature has, by the way, nothing to do with AI. This is good old-fashioned software engineering, but we do it because it makes a difference for our customers. Getting deep visibility on sort of how far you've engaged with different trainings, and we're getting it down to the scroll level. How deeply did you scroll on the engagement content that was shared with you? With AI-powered coaching, we're getting ready to ship this week two-way practice with mock AI customers. It's actually incredible. I was practicing myself for a pricing objection that I'm expecting on an upcoming conversation. And I got some great feedback. And so that sort of very flexible, deeply personalized coaching scenario. And then, last one feature we shipped on the Letter AI Copilot is the ability for it to be able to integrate with your CRM data, with your data warehouse, so that you can ask questions about things like pipeline, in addition to questions on the content that you have in Letter AI. And so, that's something that we really care about. And one thing I want folks to take away from this conversation today. And then just a quick overview in terms of customer impact. So we help customers, both large and growing, right? So customers like Adobe and Lenovo, as well as growing customers like Paro and Dealer-Built. And the impact that we have kind of spans across both top and bottom line, whether it's increasing your team's productivity and reducing the time it takes to create trainings, to giving your reps more hours per week, to ramping them up faster. So that is a quick overview on what Letter AI does. And as you can probably tell, we care deeply about this topic of AI and revenue enablement. And for us, we're gonna talk a lot about how AI will transform your role, transform the function. We want to be your best friend in that journey. So that's kind of our, if I were to summarize it in a few words, we want to be there to kind of give you all the tools, AI-powered tools that you need to succeed in your role. So that's a quick overview of Letter, and I think I concluded that just in time. So now we're gonna hop on over to questions for our panel. And I'm gonna stop screen sharing so folks can see your beautiful faces as we have this conversation. And the first question is the one that we hear the most. There's a bit of anxiety behind it. There's a bit of optimism behind it too. And that question, basically comes down to, will AI make or break my job? And so would love to hear your perspective on it, and maybe start with a make or break, and then tell us what exactly do you think is going to change? And so I'll just open it up, whoever wants to go first. Otherwise, I don't mind cold calling either. So who wants to go first?
I can hop in here. I'll throw myself to the wolves. So I think I would look at this in two ways. So I definitely don't think it's going to break your job. I think it's a great opportunity to actually evolve the way that you're approaching your processes, your approach in your role. So in terms of, for example, sales enablement, there's a lot of opportunity for us to be more proactive rather than reactive. I think a lot of challenges we see, especially right now, as the sales landscape is evolving, there's a lot more digitization coming our way. Things are moving so quickly, it can be really hard to keep up. But by leveraging tools like AI, it actually enables us to be more agile, flexible, more data-driven, to really understand and inform how we want to strategize and support our business. In terms of an individual, I think this is a great opportunity to really hone in your critical thinking skills, be more of a problem solver, really hone in on your creativity, because AI will allow you to save time and allow you to really focus on the things that matter most. When we think back to even value proposition, right? Like a lot of what we are coaching our sellers on now, and we see this all over LinkedIn, we hear this in multiple conversations, whether that's in our businesses or outside of our businesses, this whole term and concept of value selling, AI will give that time back for our sellers to really hone in and focus on how they're communicating value of their business, rather than having to focus on those mundane activities like data entry and Salesforce, which we all love, right? But we can actually focus, I had to throw that one in there.
Yeah.
But we can all really focus on being those consultants to our customers or prospective customers as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with so much of that. I don't think it's going to honestly make or break, but I think AI is going to be a defining factor of everybody's path forward, regardless of their function. And a couple key ways I see this is, first and foremost, there are hundreds and thousands of revenue enablement professionals right now looking for jobs, right? If I'm a hiring manager, I'm not hiring somebody who doesn't have a point of view on AI. But that would be true for me regardless of what function I was hiring for. If I was hiring an AE or if I was hiring a CSM, whatever it was, AI is now part of the business landscape. And so I think it's beneficial to anybody, but especially those who are looking for jobs right now, to have a defined point of view on how AI might be used as part of whatever programming or revenue impact that you want to help a company generate. And then specifically for revenue enablement professionals, I think one of the biggest differences, and I think this is a net positive, is that generative AI can most readily replace a lot of our learning delivery function, right? It allows us to use AI to insert the necessary assets and learning into a seller's experience within their workflow. without making them leave their workday, right? And that's been the holy grail for a lot of enablement for a long time is how do we resolve that classic conflict between learning time and selling time? How do we make it more possible for a seller to get what they need to move their deals forward without making them leave their workday to walk into a learning experience? So that does mean that, you know, the parts of the enablement, a revenue enablement job that are dependent upon us being the delivery point of the learning, we're going to have to let that go. And we're going to have to find a way to define our value prop in a way that isn't heavily reliant on being the delivery point.
Love everything you both said, so I won't repeat it. I mean, I'm gonna cheat, Ali. I can't pick just make or break. So in the teaser, I answered it depends. And the reason I say it depends is, you know, where it makes your job is really where you identify where it can both complement and be additive to your role and to your broader function. Frankly, there's a lot of things AI can do that humans couldn't have done anyways, right? So I think we just need to be mindful of where is it a net positive and addition or complement, or where can I spend less time on certain redundant tasks and more time on strategic tasks. You know, so really like it's a mindset piece in terms of how it can help you make your job. In terms of the break piece, I would, you know, like bluntly point out what Phil shared, which is, you know, I don't think we're in a space of like one being resistant to it and two, you know, trying to figure out how do I just do this better than AI. It's more, again, you know, where you're going to make yourself is really leaning into understanding the technology, where the technology can benefit you as an individual, your own thought leadership and expertise, but then also the broader enablement function. So those would be the biggest pieces I would just offer up is it's really an important mindset shift we need to make and an inflection point of how do we lean into this space so that we can make the very most of it.
Love it. Love everything this panel said. And I think you touched on a lot of really interesting and important points, and kind of the natural segue from that question, right? Of does AI make or break my job, or how does it change my profession, right? Is what is it already doing? What changes have you already seen in the industry, whether it's in your own roles or in customers you advise, folks you speak with on a regular basis? What changes have you seen?
Well, I'm actually AI right now. I'm not even here. So that's a big change for me, is I have plenty of free time. Um, I'll just go back again to the delivery thing because I think it is really, really significant. And I do think it's also important that revenue enablement people, we wrap our minds around this as quickly as possible. It really is making it possible for reps to get what they need and leaders to get what they need in the moment that they need it. The other thing that I think is really great about what it's doing is you'll see a lot of AI-driven coaching products, which provide coaching content for frontline managers to conduct, you know, coaching interactions with their reps. And now I would expect any frontline manager who's worth their job to not just read off the script of what a tool gives to them. But what I like about this is that one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest challenges for a frontline manager being effective is time. They just don't have enough time to meaningfully coach their reps because it's the most overburdened layer in almost any revenue organization. So when I see tools that give a frontline manager a starting point for a meaningful coaching interaction with a rep, that's fantastic because it's going to make it much more likely that the manager is going to coach regularly. And it's also going to make it much more likely that the rep is going to get what they need in order to be successful. So that's one of the very positive changes I see on the coaching side as well as the delivery side.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I was actually going to jump to you, Jeff. I'm glad you came off mute. I mean, you're kind of a legend in the sales coaching space. So kind of curious to hear your reaction to what Phil was saying and any other thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, as an example, so for those who aren't aware of it, I mean, I built Google's global sales coaching program, which reached thousands of Googlers, managers, and sellers across the world. And a phenomenal program. It's completely human led, though, right? So there's still even in that vein limitations to it. So I think the beauty, and again, where I'd say the and to that is, it doesn't necessarily take away from human based coaching. The add is always on in the flow of your work when you need it most, right? And then you maintain psychological safety where if you're a manager practicing a really difficult conversation or how to properly coach your reps, you can do that kind of on your own time and you're not waiting for a person, or potentially you don't even have a resource. If you're a smaller company, you might not just have coaches to do that, right? So I think that's one piece. And then for the reps themselves, there's the mixture of manager doesn't have time. But let's also be like pretty blunt. Some managers are really good coaches and a lot of managers aren't. So you also have the opportunity as a rep to say, I've got to work on a couple things. I know I'm going to face this objection, similar to what, Ali shared up front, a price objection potentially. Identify like what's the way you want them to handle that, and then allow AI to be a tool for them and a resource so that they can practice again in a safe environment, kind of work through that, and then ideally be more confident and capable of going into the real scenarios.
And I think coming from the lens of a seller, one thing that I've observed is just the way that folks are starting to implement AI into their overall workflows when handling a deal cycle. So we're seeing a lot of activity around ChatGPT, where the best prompts leverage and account research for meeting prep, to really target personas and things like that. So there's an evolution around the way in which folks are actually driving their pipe gen strategies, driving their meeting preparation, how they can differentiate their business against their competitors and things like that. And so I think we're going to see an evolution when it comes to the overall sales org on implementing things such as a sales AI playbook, perhaps. I know Gartner recently just updated one of their research studies back this summer, and they were actually even talking about that by 2025, 35% of chief revenue officers are actually going to create these Gen AI ops teams that will be a part of their larger go-to-market strategy and process. So I think we're just going to see a huge shift in the way that AI is playing a role when it comes to that overall operational processes just across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you think about it, it's just basic business logic. No business is going to pass up the opportunity to make more money and cut costs. And so, and for better or worse, that's the way that it's going to go, I think. So we need to anticipate and expect that some functions that can be replaced effectively with AI are gonna be replaced. And I think the guiding line there is going to be, a business is going to say, can I replace this with AI in a way that doesn't actually make me lose money? That's where the dividing line is going to be. And, as much as this is a conversation that centers a lot on how AI, replaces or changes the trajectory of revenue enablement, we also have to start looking at the likelihood that a large amount of sales functions will also be replaced by AI. And so for those of us on the call here who are account execs or SDRs or any form of, customer facing seller, I encourage you to start thinking about these things as well. It doesn't mean that your career is defunct in any way, but it means that the way that you articulate your value and the way you function is probably going to change. And to add a human lens to that, I'll say this, like I was a buyer of software in my most recent role as an executive. Buying sucks. It just freaking sucks. I hate it. It's the least favorite part of my job as a leader, and has a super high failure rate. You invest hundreds of hours in transactions that don't materialize. And a lot of the frustration comes from, from how you're dealing with your other counterparts at your company, but also buying experiences for the large part are really not enjoyable. So you have to be mindful of the fact that there's a large population of buyers out there who probably want some of the sales process to be replaced by AI, right? That's not saying that reps are bad at their jobs. It's just saying that the buying experience that you're equipped to deliver by your company is probably something that buyers are kind of desirous to have adjusted. And you got to prepare for that as an individual selling professional.
Bill, I feel like you make an excellent point there, because if anyone does not follow or listen to Connor Grennan, he is wonderful. He knows all things AI. He is so ahead of the times. But one thing that really stood out to me in a recent conversation he had on his podcast was that a lot of folks are being thrown all of these really cool, nifty new AI tools. Ali, I love you, so forgive
Yeah.
me for this, but but it's very overwhelming. And a lot of people just want to continuously purchase and buy because AI is this cool new thing, even though it's been around for a very long time. But what Connor said is that we really need to start with the problem, not the tool itself. So really understanding, how are you wanting to use that tool to solve a particular challenge or problem? How is that tying back to your goal, your organization's overall goals, your team's goals? How is that going to impact the end user? So really re-envisioning and reimagining your solutions, but leveraging AI as a mechanism to do that. So I think that's just a great point, Phil, that you made, and wanted to make sure I layered on top with some of Connor's guidance that I thought was very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to add one more thing to this point because I think it'll be helpful. I think it'll be valuable. Most sales, most revenue operations on the pre-sales side and also on the customer success side are entirely pitched to service the enterprise level sale, because people are most enamored of the deal size, right? But if you actually look at where the majority of most companies' revenue comes from and the volume of deals, it's almost always in mid-market or small medium business, right? That's where the majority of any companies, or most companies, financial stability is coming from. And that is a volume game, right? It also usually requires a deal velocity of roughly 60 to 90 days, where, you know, an enterprise sale could be several months. So I do think that that kind of deal velocity and handling a high volume of deals to advance the primary base of your revenue, AI is great at a lot of the things that make that possible. So there's also, it's worth looking at not only AI itself, but like Regina just said, what's your problem, or what do you need to accomplish? And any revenue organization that has to run a 60 to 90 day, you know, deal velocity as a regular pattern of business, there's a lot of benefit that they can get from AI.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think asking that question around business value is so important. Even when I'm having conversations with customers and I'll go into a meeting with a sales representative or, you know, a revenue enablement leader, and they'll say, oh, you know, we love this feature, we love X, Y, and Z. And then my question is always like, why? Even if they're saying they love a feature that we ship, like, why? What is the specific value it's delivering? And if you ask that why 3 or 4 times, you will get down to an insight on how you can make it even better and how you can tie it back again more closely to the business value. Because I think that's ultimately what everyone everyone needs.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all for that. We're getting some questions in the chat, which is fantastic. Please keep them coming. I am cataloging those. Really love the engagement. Jumping ahead to another question. So, you know, I think we're all in agreement that AI is going to transform what we do in a pretty fundamental way. Now, what we have to think about is change management, right? How do you set up your organization in the best way for it to succeed and for our teams to succeed, given that we know this change is coming? So, what is the advice of this panel on change management in this world of AI?
I'm happy to jump into this. So I'll kind of build a little bit off of like what Regina and Phil were sharing from the previous question. I really think at the end of the day, this comes back to like the outcome you're trying to drive, right? So, you know, drawing back to like the coaching program, you know, we didn't just decide one day, like we need coaches, like, can we have some coaches, right? We identified a problem, worked our way through proof of concept, identifying potential solutions to that, and then built that out into a broader business case anchored and rooted in data, right? So even as we make this move into the AI space, it can be overwhelming. You really take a step back and say, you know, a couple of things. One, where can AI be additive to our business? What are some things it can do that we couldn't have done before? And then what do we think that potential business value is? And then two, yes, of course, you know, going back to Phil's point, you're going to identify where can AI help us create some efficiencies, things of that nature. But it should always be driven back to value and the actual business outcome you're trying to drive, less about, sure, there's features and functions, but you don't want to necessarily run that risk of checking some proverbial box of like, we tried some new flashy thing, right? You want to actually anchor it in, we're trying this new flashy thing, proof of concept, building our way towards actual value creation as a result of that. So, you know, going back to like what Ali shared in the beginning, there's a lot of things that no matter how big your enablement function is, you might be just starting to build your enablement function. You're starting from scratch, and you can start groundswell zero. What's the ideal, function look like for us, and what are we trying to drive, and what do we need, and how can AI play a role? In a lot of other cases, you actually have like a very decades long practice, whether you call it enablement at one point and something else in the future, and then you have to unravel and unwind like what do we need to potentially change, and then most importantly, why? Like what's the change we're hoping to make, and what's the impact we're hoping to drive as a result. And we now live in an environment where it's less likely people are just going to spend more money or do more things just because. So you're going to have to be incredibly thoughtful of how you're kind of like testing, piloting, proving the value you're going to drive as a result of that. The money flow we saw for a long time up until 2021 and just like doing things is largely over. So we have to be very principled in how we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would say is as you're thinking about your change management strategy is to involve your end users early and often, whether that's conducting an audit, whether that's, bi-monthly, quarterly, or even creating a committee or council of sorts, just to ensure that you are getting value out of whether it's a tool that's surrounded by or an AI tool, or it's a new AI workflow that you're looking to roll out to the org. So I think that's something to just make sure that you're considering along the way and getting feedback from the folks that are actually the ones that are needing to leverage, this tooling day in and day out.
Yeah. I'll add this too. For those of us who are in revenue enablement, when it comes to change management, we should always be the best in the room at that. That is our professional core function, right? Now, primarily behavioral change, but that is a change management effort. And when I think about what enablers most want to do, and I think that we most genuinely want to take care of people. We want to help people be successful in their jobs. Part of that is keeping their jobs, right? So I do a good bit of GTM strategy consulting within tech as well. So I've talked with a lot of executives over the past several months, and every single one of them, when they talk about the future, like revenue leaders, like CROs, what they're talking about is between now and December 31st, 2024. Their frame of reference right now is primarily just trying to recover from the shit show of 2023 and prove to their shareholders or their VC investors that they can actually deliver on some numbers, which didn't happen last year, right? So they're in just as much of a survival posture as everybody else is. But what we have to do as revenue enablement leaders is be the ones that help them see beyond their limit of the future. And if we're sitting here talking about how AI is going to change the way in which enablers and sellers behave and reorganize their job function, as revenue enablement professionals, we have to be thinking about how does the seller in an AI world need to be skilled? If we believe that AI will replace some of the interaction between a seller and a buyer, okay, well, what skills does that now deprioritize for a seller, and what does it emphasize? And it's something as simple as, here's an example of a change in selling. We know, thanks to that amazing Gartner B2B buyer experience study from 2019, that roughly 45% plus of buyers' time is spent in self-service learning and decisioning before they talk to a rep or outside of direct conversation with reps. So what I started doing in selling conversations is I start the conversation by asking the buyer, hey, would you tell me where you're currently at in your buying experience? Because I'm going to assume that you've invested some time before this call, learning and deciding, and I don't want to waste your time by dragging you back over ground that you've already covered, right? Something as simple as that shift, that's a major behavioral shift for most sellers who are currently in tech and who have kind of come up in a value selling or solution selling mindset, right? It also means that the infrastructure behind you has to understand that following your sales process is now going to look different because your starting point of that conversation for the buyer is no longer what you've defined as the starting line of your process. It's wherever that buyer is at when they're entering the conversation. And so things like that, revenue enablement leaders, we need to be the ones leading the charge on that and helping our revenue leader customers see beyond their imagination of where the future ends.
Love that. Any other last thoughts, Jeff, Regina, before moving on to the next set of questions? Cool. Moving along, I wanted to start now diving into some of the audience submissions from the Eventbrite form, and then we'll start digging into the questions in the chat. So one of the questions we got, and you don't have to name any specific vendors, letter. No, just kidding. But you know, we got a question around what are your recommendations on modernizing your enablement tech stack, right? How do you find the best AI-powered software? So, and you can speak kind of generally, you know, how do you recommend folks think about modernizing their tech stack?
I mean, letter AI. I'll just be the one to say it. And
Right answer. All right, webinar done.
I mean that genuinely, like incredible. Here's what I would say. I have a couple names I can throw out. You know, GTM Buddy is great. You know, Letter AI is great. But functionally, here's what I encourage people to look for. You want to make sure you're pulling in a tool that also has a CMS function. Because the thing is that AI delivers assets, right? They deliver information to a user, a seller, an end user. Well, that's got to come from somewhere. And so the CMS functionality is still really critical. And so I would encourage you not to buy a tool that does not have CMS functionality built in, because integrations are always going to be integrations. They're varying levels of success. The reason why that's so important is because one of the biggest change we need to let AI make for sellers is reduce the number of times they have to go to a CMS and search for something. So the less that they have to do that, the less that they have to spend time searching for something and, you know, navigating the hellscape that always is going to be a big benefit to a revenue operation. So I'm a big fan of having a CMS functionality built into a tool.
I think one thing that I guess I can talk to, and I won't name any specific tools per se, but just when you think about modernizing your tech stack when it comes to revenue enablement, I think it's really about identifying where those bottlenecks are. Are you feeling a lot of pressure or challenges around building all of this content? Because as you know, time continues to move on, obviously the organization always is going through change, which means that your onboarding strategy also has to change over time. So building that content can take up and eat away at a lot of your days, your weeks. So that could be, you know, one thing. The other thing could also be just from a coaching aspect, you know, are you wanting to have different ways to have folks practice their pitches or role play or really hone in on their discovery questions on their calls, or seeing that ChatGPT now is being leveraged and used as a way to practice and inform how folks are really leaning into their discovery questions and getting to those second and third level types of questioning. So I think it's a matter of just, once again, identifying where you're feeling those pressures and then leaning on AI as a way to help provide that solution and offload some of that work.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with what you both have shared there. I guess like I'm gonna probably like kill the proverbial dead horse on this. Like I would just continue to like really lean into the outcomes you're trying to drive. What are the things as an enablement org you need to make sure your sellers and managers are really good at? And then how are you going to provide what I would deem as like simple, scalable, repeatable ways to deliver that, right? So when you're on the enablement side, you're thinking through, you know, what technology can I use that will help us do this in a more streamlined, agile way, keep materials up to date, things of that nature, provide, you know, coaching opportunities, et cetera. And then for a seller or manager, think about how they experience it. So going back to Regina's point of like, make sure you're talking to your users. In a lot of cases, your users, we don't talk to them enough. And the enablement org is kind of in their own echo chamber, if you will, of like, we know what's best for you. And yes, you should. But at the same time, you need to make sure you fully understand how they're going to use it and how they're going to benefit from it. You know, in a lot of cases, that might mean actually identifying how you can be more in the flow of their work on demand, providing simple, scalable, repeatable ways to do things, not necessarily running the risk of being the next, you know, kind of like compliance training or workshop they're required to take at when you deem it to be the best time for them. So I think it really just comes down to like set the right strategy and outcomes you're looking to drive with input from the business, as I would call it, and then work your way backwards into like, what are the best ways for us to provide that to you, and what technologies can we provide in AI that can assist that.
Awesome. Incredibly insightful. Jumping over, and I think, Regina, you mentioned role play. We got a question around that. And the question is, please share your point of view on role play's effectiveness and practice, and the current state of AI to create practice interactions with prospects. And just one quick remark I'll have on this before I pass it over to the panelists is, at Letter, we have a coaching capability where you can role play and practice with AI customers. And I will say we've been watching the technology progress over the past few months, maybe even years. We've kind of spent our entire careers in AI. And there recently has been a bit of an inflection point in the technology being, at least in my opinion, right? At Letter, we don't ship things to production until we have a certain level of confidence that they're going to solve our customers' needs and really delight them. And we actually just recently felt that we'd crossed that threshold with role play and this ability to converse with realistic AI. So anyway, just a little bit of perspective as someone building in this space. But yeah, curious to hear from you all on, your point of view on role play's effectiveness and AI helping with personal practice interactions and things of that sort.
Should I go first or last? I don't know. This is a very I have a very strong point of view in this space.
I think you signed up to go first, Jeff.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I run the risk of biasing the rest of the panel, but here we go. Why not? So I, deeply passionate about sales coaching. Like I said, built a program at Google. I'm still an active sales coach. Work with different companies to support that too. And look, what I would say is, at the end of the day, what you want to do is provide the opportunity, simple, scalable, repeatable ways for them to get better at what they need to deliver. And in the flow of their work, right? And the beauty of AI kind of coming into the space is, depending on the size of your organization, not everybody can afford to properly train or have professionally trained sales coaches to support their reps, right? So whether you have that or not, now you can have a tool set where a seller can work on something, and they can do it on their own time. And then the other piece I would add to this is they can do it in a psychologically safe space. So a big part of the program, even from a human element that we had built, was we wanted to always maintain psychological safety. This is not a punitive exercise. This is not we're forcing you to role play because you have to. You should practice. I guarantee you'll continue to get better the more reps that you do at that. But providing those opportunities where you can embrace it, invest in it, and the seller can kind of work out the proverbial kinks without feeling the judgment. And then allowing, because AI is not a person, it can just give them some very unbiased feedback based on what they're hearing on use of filler words. Are they following the methodology? Things of that nature that they can work on without worrying how did my manager feel about that, right, et cetera. And then when you go into the real conversations, I say all the time, don't judge your seller when they're practicing. In fact, you should be rewarding them for the practice. Judge them when it's showtime, right, in terms of how they deliver when the real scenario occurs. So that would be my strong opinion in this space. And it's just an amazing time to now be able to say, hey, coaching, anybody could get coaching, anybody, right? Whether you're a entry level, brand new in the space as a seller, or super experienced, it's available to anyone now.
Yeah, I'm gonna toss my equally strong opinion onto the pyre here, because this really makes me think about a really important thing we have to keep in mind with AI, or honestly any business efficiency, right? It's so tempting to implement AI purely as a cost-saving exercise, right? And do it from the point of view of, this is so great, look at how much money we can save, or look at how much more time our sellers have to sell, right? But the thing is that if you are doing it purely as a money-saving exercise, you will most likely replace things that limit you'll most likely implement things that limit the effectiveness of your revenue operation. The decoder ring, the guiding principle should be what it is for any business tool or business advancement you implement. How is this going to make our business more effective? How is this going to make our workforce more effective in their roles? It's not just about where you can save money. It's not just about how much time you can free up, right? So I think that's a really critical thing. Coaching is a great arena to see this come alive in. I think AI can generate the starting point of an effective coaching interaction, but with the nature of coaching and the nature of human behavioral change, I think that there will always need to be some human component of the delivery to make it effective for the recipient. Yeah.
And I think that's a great place for me to chime in, because the one caveat, and I agree with, what both Phil and Jeff just shared, but there's, a certain authenticity to the feedback we receive from coaching with our managers, from our sales coaches, our enablement teams. And so just making sure that you have a process around feedback, leverage and scale using AI to help with role play, but also make sure that you are involved and have a way to provide really feasible feedback that is personal and directed, to that, to that seller, that individual contributor, so that they can continue to improve and develop and maybe role play in specific scenarios rather than just doing the ones that they think they need to do or practice. So providing some type of tailored feedback approach, I think, is also a really important reminder.
Love that. Jumping ahead, this is a good one. So someone asked, which aspects of sales enablement do you expect AI will/can replace first? And like one other thing I'll kind of add here is, we dog food, and for folks who are not familiar with the term, essentially use our own product as much as we can and use AI as much as we can in the way in which we work. And this topic, we're talking about it in the context of revenue enablement, is kind of being talked about across all roles and functions. And one in particular is even engineering. So I have my co-founder, CTO, on the call here as well, and he's mentioned multiple times how AI has made him like a 60% more efficient coder by automating a lot of things like writing tests or finding a bug in the code and things like that. So anyway, I think it's a very interesting one. But in the context of sales enablement, which aspects of it do you think AI will and can replace first?
Sure. I have ideas. I won't be shy. I do think there's a portion of content creation that can be replaced, at least as a starting point. And as I mentioned before, I think the delivery, the way that an asset gets to a recipient, can be not only changed, but like significantly improved. And what that does is it frees up not only the seller to sell more effectively, but it frees up the enablement professional to spend their time on things that are better uses of their skills. Like, I get that up until AI, a major portion of an enabler's job, it was to deliver learning experiences. But is that the best use of our specific skill set? No, I don't think it is. I think that it's not best for the business, and it limits our perception of our value, right? So I think that in a lot of ways, resolving some of those delivery burdens and taking them off of the human enablement professional actually positions us with a new opportunity to frame our value to the revenue operation in a way that hasn't been seen before.
Yeah, because the two words that were sitting in my head before you went first was content creation. So I'll build on that, but content creation, and then I'd add and maintenance, right? So depending on what type of enablement function you're in, if you're in a very large enablement function and you have a lot of people who do content creation, then you could say to yourself, okay, what's AI? Is AI a disruptor for us here, or where is it additive, et cetera? And I'd say there's additive elements depending what you're building. And frankly, in a lot of cases, we see a lot of build, ship, and then lack of maintenance or lack of updating, right? So there could be a role to play for AI there. And then, for folks who have smaller teams, that could be a net add, right? You might say, hey, we can't actually ship as much as we could because we're a small team. And then there's more there for you. But I'd say content creation and maintenance are probably the first space I would point at.
Well, I will try my best to stay away from content creation, but totally agree. I think one of the things that we will see transform and change over time is the way that we are leveraging data, both quantitative and qualitative. So when we think about all the different conversations that sales enablement has across the org, whether that's with sales leaders or other cross-functional teams, I think there is an opportunity for the ways in which we're collecting that data and helping inform our strategy over time. Can I say what that's going to look like? Not necessarily, but that's just a prediction that I'm going to make.
And I want to add a button on this because this occurred to me after I stopped talking. I really do think that in the sense that it reorganizes what enablement does, AI actually presents a significant opportunity for the enablement profession to be known for what we're best at. I don't think that enablement is the way that we function highlights what we're best at. And that's a lot of the limitations just of the way that you deliver a learning experience, to a human. So I do think that AI actually gives us the chance to become best known for what we're best at. Yeah.
I love that. Best known for what we're best at.
Mm-hmm.
I think with that, I'm going to start diving into the Q&A in the Zoom chat. And please, folks, feel free to pile on more questions. I do still have even more questions from the Eventbrite submissions in the event that we don't have any more questions in Zoom. So we got plenty to talk about. And I know, Jeff, you had to run early for a swim class. And so for folks hearing in, Jeff may have to drop just a little bit early to drop the kids off. Cool. So this question came from Pam in the Zoom chat. She had mentioned a point Regina had made around sort of deal creation and Salesforce and sort of CRM data. And she said, totally agree with Regina on how AI is impacting deal creation, progression, and prep. Any insights on how AI would be used with enabling sales methodology and SFDC, salesforce.com? Who wants to take that first?
I can go first since I do have to hop after this one. Apologies, life happens, but this has been an amazing 51 minutes so far. So I'll chime in on this and then enjoy the rest of the session. But look, I think this is another beautiful element of where AI can potentially support. So we know different organizations adopt different sales methodologies. Either you have your own that you've created, or you adopt ones like Medic and others. The evolution is now coming where you can actually install the methodology within the platform so that when you are having someone go through coaching and practice, it can identify usage of the methodology. So, I think that's a nascent space to play with. Not to say that that's necessarily perfect today, but I think it will get closer. It will get perfected over time. But really, for me, like the biggest thing, step one is like have a way, right? Like there's so many organizations I've talked to that don't even have one, right? And then as a result, as you bring people in an organization new or they've been there a while, they all kind of have their mental kind of methodology of the way they do a certain thing, and it's inconsistent. So I would just say, most importantly, understand what's the way and the methodology, the motion and the method we need to follow to be most successful in our organization. And then how can we use AI and other tool sets to continually bring that to bear on a repetitive basis? Because what I've also often found is like, you do a training on the methodology, you're like, okay, everyone's trained on Medic or whatever it is, and then nothing else happens afterwards. And the behavior doesn't change. The repetition and the habit, frankly, of it doesn't change without continued coaching, practice, and feedback. So that'd be the biggest piece for me. Have a way, and then identify a consistent, simple, scalable, repeatable way to support it.
Yeah, I would agree. And just layering on top of that. So aside from just, using Salesforce as a way to enable your sales methodology, also take a broader look at your sales tech stack and see where there might be even opportunities to integrate different components of your tooling into Salesforce. So it might not even be that Salesforce is the top solution. It might be flooding in information from several different tools to create something specific to your organization to help better support your rollout of your sales methodology to further enable and coach.
I'm going to share, this just occurred to me as we were sitting here. So I don't have an answer for this. I'm going to pose a question that we can take away and think about. Because I'm thinking about, Salesforce updates, opportunities, and how it's always a battle, and thinking about the ways that AI can be helpful in making that happen. But I started thinking about why are updated records so important? And the reason why is because it fuels the forecast, right? So the forecast is the heart and soul of the predictive revenue model, which most SaaS tech companies or any kind of subscription-based product company works on. Well, there is a lot of discussion right now about how the predictive revenue model just is not effective for this market. So if we're talking about getting ahead of the curve and anticipating the future and how AI is a part of that, we should probably start thinking about a point of view on how does AI actually function in revenue models that are not the predictive model. That's something that just occurred to me. Yeah. I mean, if you can crack that nut, I'm sure you'll be employed forever. Or at least for the next 5 years, while the next model, that's the big fad, is the big fad. Yeah. But we're in a really significant period of change and destabilization with the way that companies have perceived their operational model to work. Like, questioning the predictive revenue model is a big thing, and it creates a lot of opportunity. Change and uncertainty creates opportunity. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I don't, sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit here. I don't see any other questions in the chat here, so I'm going to conclude with another great question we got from the Eventbrite registration, which was, sorry, let me just pull that question up. Give me 1 second here. Here we go. When working with internal teams to enhance processes with AI, what challenges or hurdles have you come across? Do you receive any resistance from internal teams? How do you navigate those situations?
I guess I can go first. So I wouldn't say that I've experienced personally any resistance, but I think more so this level of confidence and being comfortable with how to best leverage AI and role and finding a way to adapt to that change. So we're seeing, a lot of new tools coming into the sales industry right now, and a lot of toolings being thrown at sales. And so I think there is this feeling of being overwhelmed because they're having to learn so much at one time. And when they feel like they don't have a process or a workflow to really follow, then I think it kind of makes them shut down and not really want to build on that confidence or that capability to use AI in the most productive or efficient ways. So I think there is a lot of hand holding that still needs to happen when it comes to building that confidence and building, folks being comfortable using AI in role and across the org.
Yeah, and speaking from the point of view of a coach, the first response that a human has to change is always emotional. It's not rational. So that's the first thing. If you have to collaborate with peers and with leaders and colleagues, not all of them are going to be thrilled about AI. We're a pretty pro AI panel here, but that's not everybody. And also AI, because the conversation around it is the title of this webinar, like, will it make or break my job? It stokes people's survival instincts. It stokes that fear of, am I going to be able to navigate into this new era and be able to pay my bills? That's what you're dealing with. That's what you have to get somebody through before they are going to be willing to meaningfully engage with you as a business process of implementing AI. So I just encourage us all to remember, you might be talking about AI, but you're still dealing with humans, and you're still dealing with the way that humans process potential change and the way that it threatens their survival. So just keep that in mind and know that you're not going to be able to have any effective business progress on new processes until you work somebody through their initial emotional response to change.
I love how you deeply embed empathy into kind of your thinking and leadership style, Phil. So that's
Yeah. Well, it's an efficiency thing too. I mean, it's first you got to take care of the human first, but also you have to remember, the progress will come from the human and you need them. So there's also just, if you want to be even cynical about it and look at it purely from a business standpoint, you first have to get the resource engaged before you can leverage the resource. In this case, your colleague is a resource. They've got to be in the conversation in a way that can be functional for you. Yeah.
awesome. Well, we are right up on time. Really thank you both, and thanks to Jeff, who I'm sure will watch this recording later. This was a wonderful hour, and appreciate your insights. And for folks, who joined us today, you can reach out to me at any point, ali@letter.ai, if you have questions, interested in learning more about Letter, whatever it might be. I'm happy to connect. Follow the folks on this panel on LinkedIn. Regina's been putting out some great stuff. Phil has some fantastic stuff on LinkedIn. Let's keep this community tight, right? And we're going to continue doing webinars like this, but it really is powered by the community. And so we're excited to be a part of it.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you, Ellie.
Thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.